Rudra no Hiho, or Treasure of the Rudras in English, is an RPG game released and published by Squaresoft back in 1996. It is also the last game that Square has developed on the Super Famicom, so you can trust that this game will be on the highest quality, at least in terms of technology and technique used to create it. It is also good to note that if you want to play the English version, you will have to look up the fan translation version, since this game did not get an official English release. The plot concept of the game is taking place 15 days before humanity race will be destroyed by a recurring event that has also wiped out other races for every 4,000 years before they are replaced with a newer race. The story is inspired by the Indian religion, mostly using the concept of the Wheel of Times. The story is also broken into 3 separate scenarios that are taking place at the same time, where you get to choose between the 3 heroes to take control of. There will be some overlap here and there, and usually when it happens, it feels pretty awesome, since you now get to know what the other characters were doing before they meet up. The gameplay is similar to most JRPG at the time, where a player will take control of a group of adventurers and travel around different places. There is a world map section, where player will be able to travel to different towns and dungeons. After arriving at these locations, the player will now travel within the location map. You know, just the usual basic JRPG stuff. The popular random encounter features, of course, is present in this game. It is SNES JRPG after all. I don't mind random encounter too much, but this game is an old game and a JRPG that did not leave Japan, which means the encounter rate is very high. We're talking like every couple of steps. You can check my playthrough if you want to see how exactly often it is to run into one. So don't get discouraged to run away from battle sometimes if you don't feel like fighting. The combat play out like any classic JRPG, which is the usual turn-based action selection. To be more exact, player can select if they want to attack, use the mantra, defense, use item, and escape. There is also a concept of back and front row in this game, where the front row will do more damage, but they will also take more damage, and the back row will take less damage, but also will do less physical damage. However, for the back row, magic and ranged weapons still deal a normal amount of damage. So don't forget to put your mages and ranged character at the back and melee physical fighter at the front. For the party size in this game, you get a whopping amount of 4 members, which is the amount I enjoy to multitask with. No hate on the 3 party member games as well though. The spell in this game is called a mantra. Rather than having the triangle element weakness, in this game, the element weakness and strength are just going back and forth. For example, the fire element is weak to water element, and at the same time, the water element is weak to the fire. So to have the element resistant, you will just have to wear equipment of the same element that you are trying to get resistant against. However, enough about that. Let's talk about the coolest aspect of the game, the mantra inscribe feature. In the Treasure of the Rudras, you can create the spell by inscribing them. Anything you write can become a spell. Of course, it is not that entirely chaotic either. Since the game does have logic associated with a certain word, you can learn these words by talking to an NPC or obtaining them from a chest in a dungeon. The player can also learn prefix and suffix that they can later combine with their spell to increase its effectiveness. Sounds kinda confusing, yes I know. I'll give you some example. For example, the word X in the game is basic fire element spell. So when I inscribe the word X, I will be getting the basic fire spell. Now later, I might learn the prefix lust, so I then inscribe Iglus. I will be getting stronger fire spell. Pretty cool, right? So apart from this spell, some unique spells are just basic English words, like the word berserk will berserk the character you cast it on, and soft will decrease the target physical defense stat. So there is a lot to experiment with and explore. Don't be afraid to use a guide though if you don't want to fiddle with this too much, because it can be a bit time consuming to try out different writing and figure out what words means what. The coolest part about this though is that you can just inscribe anything anytime, as long as you know the writing. So if you learn something from the first scenario, you then can use them right away when you start on your second scenario. The difficulty in this game is hard one to describe. During my playthrough, I choose to play my first scenario blind and the rest with a decent amount of health from the guy. I can tell you that the section I played blind was quite brutal, since I do not know of any of the mantra yet, so I'm stuck with really weak spell. I'm also not able to figure out the multipliers, prefix and suffix mantra truly. To make the matter worse, this game is quite strict about elemental weakness. So when I face some of the bosses, I will deal absolutely no damage and it would take a ton of damage, resulting in a few reset before I can figure out the enemy properties. So make sure to have an element resist mantra ready or equip the right armor when facing a boss. It's a good idea. I do think it is somewhat nice in a way that they are strict about it. It does force you to have a good habit of checking what you are wearing and what mantra you will bring into battle. All in all, make it so that you have to switch strategy around a bit, then just be able to power through with just the same mantra or strategy alone. For direction, the game does a decent job of telling you where to go next and how to get there. However, this is only true for the beginning part of the games. There is no world map either, so you will have to memorize what is where if you choose to play this blind. Also, it is good to note that you will most likely miss a lot of a side quest if you are just casually playing this game blind, as there are a lot of locations where you can visit that are not related to the main story. The worst part is that some location will only be accessible if you trigger some event early on. For example, there is this whole side quest that I don't have access to because I did not pray to a statue before I leave the first village in one of the scenarios. I mean, I don't even know that I can talk to this statue, so it's really up to you how you choose to play the game. I'm just sharing my experience to help you make this decision. Another thing good to talk about is the resource management in this game. You can only hold 9 quantities of the same item in one go, and you will be casting a lot of mantra, meaning that you will be low on MP often and need to refill. You can buy MP recovering item at most if not all store, but there won't be a store in the middle of the dungeon. And with the high encounter rate, it is not too common that you will run out of MP. The way I choose to combat this though is to pick my battles. If the monster I'm fighting is giving a lot of EXP and money, I'll be willing to take the fight more, and the rest I'll run because it is a waste of time. You can also be smart about pacing your grind. If there is a spot that is close to town or a recovery point that spawn an enemy that give a lot of EXP, do consider farming there for a bit. It doesn't have to be long. Most of the time I just grind for about 20-40 minutes or less, then I'll skip most mob I find in the dungeon if they give too low of an EXP. The game is doing a good job at spread out this grinding location, so don't be shy to give it a grind if you run into one. Talking more about the story, the game is divided into 3 scenarios that happen at the same time as I mentioned before. You get to choose whatever scenario to play first, but I do feel like going down the list give a pretty good experience. It's also good to note here that you can switch in and out of the scenario at will. Like maybe you just want to play a bit of scenario 1 and stop and go play the other scenario before you choose to continue. The first scenario is about a soldier named Zion. The second scenario is about an archaeologist named Serlins, and the last scenario is about a priestess named Riza. As mentioned before, their story overlap a lot, and not only that, they also trade items with each other as well. After you complete all the scenario, all the heroes will combine forces for the final fight. Pretty cool concept for a game, especially around that time, to be honest. Since we are talking about the story, it is also good to mention that fan translation by Aeon Genesis is really well translated. I feel like the character personality and joke are coming through pretty well. The graphic of Treasure of the Rudras is the top of the line, filled with expressive sprite for many characters, high quality detailed background with great colors. The enemy rendition is similar to Final Fantasy VI, where they are drawn in full proportion compared to the Party Chibi rendition. Not only do this monster sprite is detailed, they are also animated, which give more life to the sprite. The music throughout the game is amazing. However, there is only one battle themes for the regular battle, which is not odd for this kind of game, but you got to remember that the encounter rate is pretty high, so be ready to hear it a lot. Bosses and different locations have different music though, and they are great. Overall, Treasure of the Rudras is a great game in my books. Unfortunately, it is being released very late in Super Famicom Life. At this time, the PlayStation is already 2 years old, so there is a lot of 3D games coming out, which does overshadow Treasure of the Rudras quite a bit. That's also the reason why many would consider this game to be a hidden gem. There is no official translation either. The game's complicated spell creation system does not help at all when it comes to translation, but we are lucky enough that there is a fan translation available. I urge you to give this game a try and see for yourself if this is an old game worth playing. If you are looking for more old JRPG review, you can head on over to our channel to check more out. We also upload the playthrough we used to make this review, so feel free to give that a watch as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll be seeing you guys next time.